We're here in the National Portrait Gallery looking at a portrait of General Ulysses S. Grant by Norwegian-American painter Ole Peter Hansen Balling. This work was painted by Balling in 1865. Ulysses S. Grant had succeeded in little in his life beyond the field of battle. Even studying to become a soldier was pretty trying for him. At West Point, he was poor at some subjects, for example French, though he truly excelled at others, like horsemanship. He graduated from the United States Military Academy in 1843. Grant was first put to the test in the war with Mexico, where he performed well, but then, later, at stations of duty in the Pacific Northwest and California, he seemed to take less of an interest in the mundane and quotidian aspects of maintaining a standing army. Grant retired from the Army in 1854 and settled down with his wife, Julia Dent, the sister of a former West Point classmate. First, Grant failed at farming in Missouri, and then later, he struggled as a store clerk in Illinois. In the Civil War's commencement in 1861, Ulysses S. Grant found just the excuse he needed to return to the military. By February of 1862, the Civil War had been going on for 10 months, and President Abraham Lincoln in Washington, D.C. hadn't gotten what he wanted out of his generals back east. He hadn't gotten a lot of warfare, and he also hadn't gotten a major victory. Things were about to change, however, on the Western Front. At this spot in northwestern Tennessee, Fort Donelson, roughly 12 miles from Fort Henry, two great victories were won by Ulysses S. Grant. On February 6th of 1862, 12 miles to the west from here, Fort Henry fell to Grant's 15,000 men and 7 gunboats. In the ensuing days, Grant's men marched the 12 miles to the east to this site, Fort Donelson, and provided Abraham Lincoln with something that his other generals back in the east hadn't done, a decisive victory. Forts Henry and Donelson were significant because they were both located on rivers, the Tennessee River and the Cumberland River. At the outset of the Civil War, one of the major strategies was to choke the South off from the rest of the nation and inside itself by eliminating Southern access to the rivers and to the railroads. The defeats at Henry and Donelson did precisely this. Forts Henry and Donelson were the coming out party of sorts for Ulysses Grant. These victories would serve to begin the process of cutting the South off from itself. By occupying the riverways, the North would choke off one of the primary means of Southern transportation and distribution. Henry and Donelson were also Grant's notice to the world that the Northern armies were on the move and willing to make war. As we see in this portrait of Grant and his generals, also by Norwegian-American painter Ole Peter Hansen Balling, Ulysses Grant was on his ascent as a warrior and a leader. 1862 was the beginning of his moment.